Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a beautiful sunny day out there. I'm excited about it. I want to give a tip for success for those of you showing up early and on time. Let me just turn this one caption off really quick. I use something called a joke book. And I heard this from Jerry Seinfeld. Somebody was asking him how he how he handles jokes, et cetera. And he goes to a bar in New York City, or he used to, right? But he writes every single day, and he writes down jokes that he tells that people like, and then puts it in there. And that's how he starts getting sets. And when I heard the way he handled just his whole career and developing jokes and doing that, it really gave me an idea for just creating my own joke book. But for me, I'm writing down good lines. Like, for example, in a minute, you'll hear me say, government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. Well, that's something that popped into my head back in 2018, and I wrote that down. And there's all sorts of other things that are like that. You might have ways of talking about your company. You might have good quotes you like. Like one of my favorite quotes is, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. And so I have pages and pages and pages of those things that relate to the trainings I do, et cetera. It's something you might consider doing as well for your business, this way of speaking to your customer in some sort of phrases that they would get. And an example, and this is the last tip part of the tip I'll give you, but a bias for action. Right now, the federal government has moved away from this term, or is moving away from this term that I've used for many years, called move with a purpose. Now it's a bias to action. And the idea is, don't wait for the planning to be perfect. Just get started. Then we'll figure it out as we go along. So anyways, consider having a joke book where you're writing down things, because God puts ideas in our memory and then we forget them 2 seconds later. So hopefully that'll help you. It's a quick little tip for those of you showing up early and on time. I just want to say thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. When you do, LinkedIn puts the word out there that we're here. So I'm seeing everybody engage. Do me a favor. Just put joke book in the chat if you got that tip. It'd be great to see who got that tip early on. All right, while you're doing that, let's go ahead and get started in today's training. We're going to be talking about planning for the end of the year. FY 2025 is wrapping up, and I want to give you some strategic guidance for going into the end of the year. Will do, Leslie. Okay, so here's some things I want you to pay attention to as we go into this training. End of the year spending in the federal market is an absolutely guaranteed thing. It happens. It happens all the time. You'll see me talk about it in numbers in a few minutes. But the idea is that when we get to the end of the year, the fourth quarter, the government's going to be spending money. This typically happens, and this is my opinion, but this typically happens because the government never gets its act together and passes the budget early enough for agencies to be confident that they can start spending. And so a lot of the planning they had for 12 months is shoved into 9 months, or even less time. And so that end of the year, they're like, okay, we do have this money. We are able to spend it. And then one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, ever, is this whole idea of use it or lose it in the budget. When I was in the Army, we used to have to spend the money. Otherwise, not only would we not get what we asked for next year, they would reduce it. They go, oh, you only spent 10 million, not 11 million. So we're going to reduce your budget next year to 10 million. It's like, no. We saved $1 million. We want to use it next year, plus add 2 more million. And so government agencies are kind of forced to use it or lose it. I'm not here to have a whole big debate about the budget dialogue, but this is why stuff is happening. We know this is going to happen. The thing you need to remember, though, is your competition started doing planning for end of the year spending yesterday, right? They started pursuing end of the year spending yesterday, and they got the leg up on us, right? If you weren't already planning for it yesterday, then you're already a little bit behind. And that's okay if you start today, right? And that's my question for you. Are you going to start today planning and pursuing end of the year spending in the agencies of your choice, or are you going to push it off until tomorrow? There's this great line, and I think I use it loosely when I say there's a great line, but there's this line that says, I'll get around to it. Well, I'll do that when I get around to it. And people used to hand out these little wooden round to-its, and it'd say "to it" on it or something. And it's like, well, there's a to it, and I get around to it, right? So I want you to do that same thing. Let's get started on pursuing end of the year spending today, and not wait till September and go, oh, that's the end of the year. So today we're going to be talking about government contracting, end of the year strategic planning, some ideas of how you can plan to be proactive about what you're doing for end of the year spending and not reactive. I'm going to break up the training into 3 sections. First thing I want to talk to you about is just spending patterns you can expect. Today's June 2nd. So in June, July, August, September of 2025, you've got a 4-month window for end of the year spending, and it starts today. So I want to show you some patterns in there. Second thing is I want to talk to you about how to get in front of buyers, right? Federal buyers are the folks you need to be talking to. And many of us out there will tell you, you got to have relationships, you got to be building relationships, you got to get visibility. It's easier said than done for sure. But I'm going to give you tips on how to get in the door. I've done hundreds of trainings on building relationships, getting in the door. So today's just going to be a couple of tips, but you can go back and watch a lot more if you struggle with that. I've done tons of training. And then the third thing I want to follow up with is really the most powerful thing I think you can do for end of the year spending is responding to sources sought and RFI notices in your sweet spot. So you have a core competency. In fact, I'm hoping some of you are putting in, let me rephrase that, all of you are putting in your core competency, 2 or 3 key words that says, this is what I sell. Put that, in fact, into the chat. Say, I sell this, this, and this, right? And none of you funny people put this, this, and this. Tell me what you sell, right? That's your core competency. And that is what I want you to respond to RFIs and sources sought on. Stay focused, and you'll be able to write those RFI responses fast. You'll be able to speak to it, and you'll get visibility. So we'll talk about that at the end of the training here. That's the last thing I'm going to cover. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success. You ever have a brain fart? I just literally stopped. I provide you tip for success in the federal market. After I got out of the Army, I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business government contractor. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. Part of the process, it's funny, is doing this training. I will tell you, I get people asking me sometimes, are you live? Do you think I would have done that stumbling if I did this live? I would have just recorded it. The problem was I saw somebody's chat, like somebody said, shout out to something, and it disappeared, and then my mind got distracted. I apologize. Hey, if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have nearly 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, and these aren't just my followers. This is our broader network. When you connect with me, then you're connecting with my network. You can reach out. Hey, I saw you in Neil's training or something like that. And you can start building your own network broader. If you haven't subscribed to my government contracting success newsletter on LinkedIn, do that. That newsletter has content that you will value as a small business trying to pursue success in the federal market. I just put out a new article today about call planning, et cetera. So, John, less words, less words. Don't put big chats, but little chats. Okay, so tomorrow's training, by the way, if you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. Tomorrow's training is RFIs, what to do before you respond to an RFI. Let's get started talking about the spending patterns that happen within the federal government within the fourth quarter, right? And these are just numbers pulled from USA Spending, and I'm going to go show you how I do it very fast, right? But I'll show you how I do it. You can kind of watch it on replay. Actually, so as you look at this chart or this slide, I've got past Q4 spending, and then over on the right, it says defense spending. What I'm showing is the difference between the overall spending that happens in the fourth quarter and how much of it was DOD's. And that's a really important thing to remember, that the DOD is the biggest spender in the government, but in particular in the fourth quarter, and the Army bigger than any. So in FY 2024, just last year, $263 billion was contracted out in fourth quarter, right? $157 billion of it was done by DOD, so primarily by the Army, Navy, and Air Force, but then all those fourth estate agencies within DOD. $243 billion in FY 2023. 2022, 236, 204 in 2021. You can see this pattern from 2021 coming up to 24, that the spending just keeps increasing. It's pretty predictable that the spending is going to be over 200. I think I put right here in this red box to make it a little bigger for you, but it's a fair expectation that it's going to be 250 billion. Let's check back in again next June and find out whether I was right. But that's a fair expectation based on what the FY 2025 budget is, and how so far only 304 billion has been awarded. Now, keep in mind, there's probably at least let's say 60 days to be generous, not counted yet that has already been spent, and probably some things that haven't even been recorded. So that number, easily could come up to 500 billion, and that's already been spent, but it still leaves $200 or $300 billion to be spent, depending on how much we end up spending. But guaranteed, there is going to be a huge push at the end of the year. So let's go ahead and take a look at USA spending really quick, and I'll show you how I did this. So inside of USA spending, let me just make sure I'm live here. For some reason, my phone just kind of been screwing up these days. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm on USA spending. If you don't know, this tool pulls its data out of FPDS, which is the official repository of contracts awarded to industry. So I'm going to come in here, and what I'm looking for, when I'm trying to find that data is, let's just look at end of the year spending. I'm going to sit there and say 7. So the last quarter, 7/1/2023. No, 2024. Oops. Let me try that again. 2024 to 10/1/2024. Okay, so if I did that correctly, let me zoom in for you. What I'm saying is the fourth quarter in 2024. But let me just actually change this really quick. 2024, and then this one is 9/30/2024. Okay. So I leave off the first day of the FY 2025. Okay, so all I did was search that for 1 second, and the data is coming up. And I want to show you a couple of quick search terms. I'm going to watch my time. The first thing I did is just said, let me take a look at this stuff, and I got a ton of information. The next thing I tend to do, and I do this all at once when I'm doing it myself. The next thing I'm going to do is right here, there's something called award types, and I just want contracts. I don't want grants or loans or any of this other stuff. So I'm just going to say, show me contracts, and I'll hit submit. And I'm going to go from 1.8 million, I think it was right there. So it's still doing pretty good on contracts. But now if I scroll down, I can see the numbers here, and I can see in the fourth quarter, 156, I rounded up to 57 in defense, right? First stop is right here on this part. I can change this to awarding sub-agency, and now I can see, oh, look at that. The Navy actually beat out the Army last year. That's like highly unusual. So anyways, you can see right here, though, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, top spenders, and then VA pops right up there. But look at that jump, right? Army and Navy are spending twice as much as the VA. And then you're coming down to DLA and some of these other ones, which are like FSA or FAS is everybody kind of thing. But you can see that spending pattern by sub-agencies. And the last thing I'll show you is right here. It's showing you by month how it really picks up towards the end of the year, right? So you can see that spending yourself. What I want to show you then is a little bit more, because I got time. If you come in here, I can say, show me recipient type. Right here, I just want to say, show me small businesses that are winning. I'm going to filter this again. Hold on, I'll come back out and show you. So there's my filters, right? The time period, the award type, and the small businesses are the winners. So I don't know if you remember, but it was 1.8 million contract records. Don't think of them as overall contracts, right? But records. And so now it's half that. That means only half were small businesses. And let me come down here. Let me zoom out for a second. I'm going to zoom out. Look at the staggering difference here on the DoD for small business. But if I come to the agencies, the Army is much more favorable to small businesses. You can see here the Army, $12 billion, 9 and 8 to and 7 to DLA, Navy, and Air Force in there. But you see this traction, right? I can learn that information, come down here again. I can see there's this massive spending at the end. Last thing I'll do is, let's just say you're an 8A company, and I want to see how big's the spend at the end, and maybe who's tended to do that last year. So I'm just going to come in here. I chose 8A. Remember, there was like 981,000. Oh, that's funny. Something's missing. Look at that. I don't know why it is, and I don't have time to check, but 944,000 contract actions were for an 8A. Hold on one second. Let me just check my thing. Yeah, I don't understand how the 8A could possibly be there, but it is at the moment. I'm not going to go into the data, but you can do this yourself, right? You can start looking at this data. No, that's all the same data. Something's wrong with that. I don't know if you noticed, but I said, oh, I know what the problem is. Let me get rid of small business. So the problem was I was saying small business and 8A. That's why it was still the same. So now when I say 8A, it goes from 900,000 down to 69,000. So here, if I come down now, let me come back. Now you can see DOD is staggering amount that's more. And if I come in here, I can see that for 8As, the Army is almost double, or I guess 50% bigger than Navy and Air Force. And those three are much bigger than anybody else. Last year was Department of State was pretty big, but I don't see that happening this year. And then the last thing you can just see is the spending. For 8As, there is double the amount that's going to happen in September. This is going to go to some of the slides I'm going to talk about where you need to be where the buyers are looking. And so let's switch back to the other area. Hey, I just came back and I saw my screen was white. So hopefully it was not white for you when I was showing you. If it was, tell me and I'll sit there and put a separate video of that again, but it should have been good. All right, so let's go into how to get in front of some of these agencies. So when you see me talking about end of the year and even September, literally the end of the year, the people who are going to be doing that spending, these are basically the contracting officers, right? Program offices or federal buyers and all that stuff that I teach. But end of the year spending tends to heavily ramp up with contracting officers in, let's say, absolutely August and September, where right now you want to be getting in with program offices, maybe trying to engage them and get ahead of the curve. But either way, you need to let buyers know that you exist. If buyers can't see, I'm just trying to see if anybody saw that. Tell me if you saw the USA spending, just so I can close my mind on that. But if buyers can't see you, if buyers can't find you, then how can they buy from you? That's always a line I talk about, right? And so you need to let buyers know you exist. There's something called inbound sales and outbound sales. Thanks, Melvin. Outbound sales is when you knock on somebody's doors. That's perfect. You're going to go out and build relationships. But you're barely going to be able to knock on, let's say, aggressively 500 people's doors in the next 4 months. So the end of the year. That's outbound sales. Inbound is when they go looking for a company like yours and they find you, right? And they call you. That's what you really want to ramp up. It's a 99 to 1% ratio. 1% of the doors you can knock on, the other 99%, you're hoping they knock on your door because you're just never going to get to them. In DOD, there's hundreds of thousands of buyers out there. You need to make it easy for them to find you. You need to be visible where those buyers are going to look. So the number one place to be and to make sure you're doing good is GovCon in the box, is DSBS. DSBS is the number one market research tool used by the government buyer. They go into SAM and DSBS and they try to find companies like yours. If you're invisible in there, or if you don't look attractive, then they're not going to call you up. They're not going to invite you to come in and bid or even talk to them about potential bids. Go to govconinabox.com and check out your federal visibility score for free. How visible are you to federal buyers? I give you a score. And if your score is less than 100, I tell you exactly what you need to do to fix it for free. You can go fix it on the government's tools. GovCon in a box, we just provide you the guidance, but you go do the fix on DSBS or SAM, et cetera. But be visible, first off, so they can find you. And then attractive is make sure you have a clear, focused offer. If you're selling cybersecurity and somebody's searching for cybersecurity and you come up, don't say that you also do software development and cloud management and construction and toilet cleaning. Like, don't get confused. Be really tightly focused on a core offer. Once you're in the door with a happy customer, you can sell them everything. But when you're marketing and you're trying to get people's attention, they're looking for the very best lawnmower, the very best cybersecurity protection expert, right? And so being attractive is making sure your company is basically saying everything around cybersecurity, if that's what they search for, or around facility maintenance, if that's what they're searching for. And then you have experience as well. So some tips for getting in the door. The first thing I would be doing is calling contract officers. And when I say this, I mean literally pick up the phone, call them. If I know that I'm trying to get in the Army, I'm going to go to FPDS and I'm going to find a bunch of contract officers. I know Dave Waltz is in here from the Navy, and he'll tell you small business professionals are a good way in, and they are, but they're only one way in. But if you go into the Navy and you find tons of contract officers, you can also try to go in there. but don't spam any of them. Don't spam the small business professional. Don't spam the contracting officer. And that's what your competitors are doing. They're literally using tools to send out mass messages. I was just looking at somebody whose point of contact name is Mr. Something in their profile. And so when you automate things, Dave Waltz, for example, is going to get an email saying, Dear Mr., right? That's what happens when you automate stuff, is it doesn't improve it. But even if you could automate it and everybody is doing that, then Dave Waltz is going to get 50 emails or 500 emails from everybody kind of saying the same thing. But how many phone calls? How many people are literally going to pick up the phone and call him? That is a tip for you to get in. Now you just narrow that down to where you're trying to target, which I think I talk about in a minute. So as small business professionals, so even though I just said there's a lot of ways to get in, small business professionals who are supportive, and the Navy has a lot of good folks like David, call them and ask them to get in, but make sure you know where you're trying to go, right? Make sure you're ready for them to refer. They don't have time, and it's not responsible of them to refer you to a program office or a contracting office if you don't have any experience in the federal market. Instead, subcontract. But if you do have experience, the federal buyers are looking to talk to you. I put in here, you can also call the other 7 advisors. I coined this term, the 7 mentors or advisors that you want. And the idea is you have small business professionals. You have PCRs, Procurement Center Representatives from the SBA. You have the district office and the business opportunity specialists within the SBA. You have the Apex Accelerator, Small Business Development Center, the Women Business Center, which I think just got gutted, the Veteran Business Center. You can call all these people, build relationships. They have relationships with federal buyers. Maybe you can get an intro through there. Another way to get in the door and get in front of federal buyers is start engaging on LinkedIn. I engaged on this weekend on something, and somehow I hit some senior contracting officers who then engaged back. Hey, thanks for that comment, Neil. I'm like, hot dog. I'm going to reach out to them this week and say, hey, I'd love to just touch base, 15-minute intro call, right? But you can do that with the people you're targeting. I tend to do it less for contracting officers who are not on LinkedIn as much, but the program office personnel, they absolutely are. So you can go out and find them. And the last thing, which I'll talk about in a whole nother slide next, is respond to sources sought and RFIs. When you do, you're literally giving your business card and your flyer right to federal buyers. And compare that to a phone call, which is great, but it's not as great as an RFI response, or an email. It's not as great. An RFI response means you are engaging with that buyer. They are thankful that you responded. I did this training last week, and I said that the Army had this massive, just beautiful opportunity that they did a sources sought on. Only 38 companies, small businesses, responded. It was staggering to me. There's 12,000 businesses serving the Army as prime contractors, and only 38 responded on this. And this was like all great IT services. So I know there was thousands of companies who could have responded. When you respond, you are differentiating yourself from the 350,000 plus other small businesses trying to sell to the federal market. Okay, so I get excited and fast. I wanted to just thank our sponsors before I continue. Talk to Graham. If you got staffing or American Sign Language services, they can support you on that. Talk to Kate, who probably is in here from KZO, about fractional finance and contract support, pricing. Think pricing before and after the contract award. You can reach out to Steel Toed, a sponsor of ours, who does cybersecurity and in particular can help you with CMMC needs. And then the last thing is GovCon in a box. We help you find and win federal opportunities, really tighten up the opportunities you're going after. So thank you to our sponsors, and please check them out. At the very least, say thanks to the sponsors. Okay, so I got 6 minutes left. Let me talk to you about the power of sources sought and RFI responses. This is a huge deal, right? Oh, my slide is kind of building. It's always fun when I have technical hiccups. Well, I'll talk to it. Let's see if my slide comes up. But first thing is market research, where the sources sought and the RFI happens. That's a buyer looking for a seller. I know some of us might have experiences where we feel like we responded to RFIs. It doesn't go anywhere, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's just normal. Nobody in the government ever did a sources sought or an RFI because they wanted to waste industry's time, right? They just haven't. And so these sources sought and RFIs are where they try to engage the industry to learn more about the requirements they're trying to shape, or to learn more about the technical or the acquisition approach they should pursue. Let me just back my slide 1 second just to see if I can restart it. Okay, so let's talk about what I recommend you put in your RFI. And I've done tons of training about this, but I really wanted today to break up an RFI response into 3 ways of thinking. The first thing is address what they ask for, right? If the government is asking for something, sure, give it to them. You want to give it to them because that's the engagement, that's the interaction, right? Back and forth. And so if they're asking particular questions or they're asking for your ideas on things, go ahead and give that to them. I always write for the win. That means I always put my best content forward. I don't save that for the RFP. For me, I'd rather win on the RFI and push the competitors out than to wait for the RFP. So the first thing you do is make sure you're being compliant with the RFI and answering their questions, et cetera. Second thing I want you to do, though, is add more content wherever the pages will allow you. But most importantly, even if it's 2 pages, I make sure 25% is what I want to say. And this is the second bullet in there. I tell them what makes us great, going beyond what they ask for, right? I weave in whatever I can into the response of what they ask for. And then I go, oh, but you should also know this about us. We are phenomenal about this and this and this, right? And so you want to go beyond what they ask for, but make sure first you give them what they ask, then sit there and tell them something extra. And then the third thing, the third section, if you will, and they can be woven together, is maximizing your strengths and weaknesses. So this is capture. You're trying to get them to think more about what you can do. So for example, let's just say something simple, like if you have CMMI level 3, you want to get that into the paperwork. You might want to minimize your weakness. So if you're not on Oasis and you know they use it, right here is the time to say, hey, we really encourage you to go use GSA Mass Sin 5555 or whatever, right? And the idea is you're trying to steer them to your contract vehicle. These strengths and weaknesses are both in the acquisition side, like set it aside to women-owned or don't set it aside to women-owned, right? And then it's on the technical scope. You want them to be thinking about areas you can help on. All right, last thing I want to talk to you about on RFIs and the power, and remember I said this is a way to be visible, is when you send an RFI back, it's going to be seen generally by 3 stakeholders, and the 3 most important stakeholders in there. First one is the contract shop, right? The contracting officer, contract specialist, et cetera. They get it, they receive it, they process it, they've learned about you, and they thank you. Whether they reach back to you doesn't matter. Like, oh, thank you, I got a response, right? That's them. Second one is the program office personnel. So if you're writing a technical response more to the RFI's point, then your response is going to them, and they're learning who you are, and most importantly, they're learning what you want them to think. That's the whole point of a response, is I'm trying to influence the government's thinking, the buyer's thinking, in a way that's going to benefit them, but I'm trying to influence it. And the last one is the small business professional. Make sure you always copy a small business professional when you submit a sources sought and an RFI. That way you can follow back up and use them to help you get in the door and start tracking. I'll actually talk about that in 2 days when I talk about what to do after you submit an RFI. Don't let it go into the black hole, right? Okay, here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First thing is make sure you're targeting one agency. Let's say the Army or the Navy for David Waltz's sake, right? Target one place and go in and spend 4 months going in and saying, I'm getting $1 million or I'm getting $5 million in sales out of this, but don't deviate because you won't get good. Second thing is reach out to 200 plus people. Don't think you could do this by reaching out to 10 or 20 people. You need to reach out to 200 or 300 people in order to get anybody to take your call, respond to your email, to engage you, right? So you need to reach out to a big enough pool. And the last thing is make sure you respond to RFIs in your sweet spot, your core competency at your target agency. Okay, I'm running out of time. I did want to let you know that we have a BD Accelerator workshop. I've got a little bit room that just opened up this year, so put workshop in the chat. Remember, this workshop, though, is for companies that are already doing some traction. 2+ million, you've got experience and you're looking to accelerate into agencies. I do this training for those of you who are new or can't afford to work with me, right? I come back and I train every single day. So just remember, as you're going out there and you're thinking about end of the year spending, government contracting and end of the year spending, neither one of them are secrets. They're just processes. Follow the process, you're going to have the success you want. I will see you in the next training.